Laden came about because we were able to track the fact that they were burning their garbage. We learned that. We learned they didn't have internet. We learned they didn't have phone hookups. We began to observe that suspicious pattern of behavior ourselves. And the reason we were able to observe it is because the Pakistanis were allowing us to have those kinds of personnel on the ground who were doing that. In addition, they have allowed us to run a pretty aggressive drone campaign against al-Qaeda in the western part of their country that has also wound up with significant civilian casualties. So, you know, we've got to recognize that each of us have had a difficult set of choices here. It doesn't excuse the world's #1 criminal being harbored, if indeed he was, but before we leap to conclusions, we need to ask those questions and pursue that thoughtfully.
Finally, Senator Kerry, I mean, in relation to the war in Afghanistan, clearly the objective was to go after al-Qaeda and bin Laden in particular. Now that he has been eliminated and al-Qaeda's presence in Afghanistan seems to be massively lower than it was, is this the signal for the end of the war in Afghanistan?
It's a signal for the beginning of a transition, I think. And the question is, what is the exact nature of that transition and how far does it go? We are actually, by happenstance, mere coincidence with this particular event, starting a series of hearings that will go over the next several weeks in the Foreign Relations Committee looking at Afghanistan and Pakistan. A lot of people have to stop and make a slightly different calculation today than they were making before this news was announced yesterday.
But whichever way you look at it, Senator, a very good day to be an American, and great to see the back of one of the worst terrorists in history.
No question. No question.
Senator, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Senator Chuck Schumer likens the death of Osama bin Laden to a Gettysburg or a Saratoga and calls it a turning point in the war on terror. A New York senior senator joins me now. Senator, tell me exactly what went through your mind the moment you heard that bin Laden had been killed.
Well, I felt very good about it, and I immediately thought of the families. So many of them had told me over the years that it just galled them that they had lost loved ones and bin Laden was still alive, and of course the hole in their hearts will never heal, but at least some justice has been done and they have some degree of solace.
I mean, in terms of justice, I absolutely agree with you. And last night when I heard the news, I landed from London, been at the royal wedding, got to New York and heard this incredible news. And like everyone, I was exhilarated. And then reality sets in because I then heard some commentators say this was the end of the war on terror, which struck me as a pretty fatuous thing to say because it clearly isn't, is it?
No, as I said, I believe it's the Saratoga or the Gettysburg, a turning point, but not the end. It's a significant turning point because while bin Laden was in part a symbol, it was a symbol with reality. Thousands of young men and young women were recruited by him, saying a few more terrorist incidents against the West and the whole society will collapse. Well, obviously, he's dead and we're here. And I think it's a real body blow, particularly not only to al-Qaeda, but to other terrorist groups. I think there's going to be a turn in the war on terror. We're going to have to be far more mindful of the lone wolves, the individuals, like the Times Square bomber, the Christmas Day bomber, because we've done a very, very good job, our intelligence, our military, at going after the groups for the reason we listen in on almost anything they say. The house that bin Laden lived in had no electronics, and for good reason, survival. So these individuals, these lone wolves, they don't communicate with many other people, and we're going to have to figure out ways to deal with them. But so far, so good, and you know, I don't think, Piers, it's an accident that we, praise God, haven't had a terrorist incident in the United States. We're getting better and better and better at this.
And Senator, tell me about the lapel pin that you're wearing.
Yes. Well, you know, I visited with Senator Clinton the site on 9/12. There was death in the air, the actual smell of death, and so many moving things, particularly hundreds of people lined up, Pierce, with signs they were holding. Have you seen my sister in a picture? Have you seen my father? Because in those early days, we didn't know if people were just missing or dead in the rubble. And I was touched by it, and I went home that night and I called for Americans to wear the flag. Millions did. I put this flag on. I've worn it every day since 9/11, and God willing, I'll wear it every day for the rest of my life. I'll tell you one thing. I couldn't be prouder of wearing this flag than today.
Senator Schumer, thank you very much indeed.
Thanks, Pierce.
Coming up, one of Osama bin Laden's relatives and what it was like inside the family.